Judge Thomas Carter sat tall in his chair, his gavel firm in hand as the courtroom buzzed with whispers. He was known for his sharp mind and unshakable demeanor, but today, something was different. He looked down at the defendant standing before him, a black woman in an orange jumpsuit, her wrists in shackles. The moment their eyes met, his entire world shifted. He knew that face. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. The woman standing on trial, accused of a serious crime, was his childhood best friend, Maya Thompson. His mind raced. How could this be? How could the same girl who used to race him down the dusty streets of their old neighborhood, who once made him pinky promise to always be her best friend, now be standing in front of him like this? His heart pounded as he struggled to maintain his composure, but the shock in his eyes betrayed him. Maya gasped. She recognized him too. The entire courtroom fell silent, sensing something was off. The prosecutor, the defense attorney, even the jury, everyone waited. Then, before anyone could react, Maya did something no one expected. She broke down into uncontrollable sobs. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice trembling, her hands shaking. The bailiff moved toward her, ready to restore order, but Thomas raised his hand. He had to understand what was happening. He had to know how Maya, his Maya, ended up here. And then, she spoke the words that made the entire courtroom gasp. "I didn't do it," she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "I swear on my life, I didn't do it." The gavel slipped from Thomas's fingers. That was when everything truly fell apart. The days before the trial had been a nightmare for Maya Thompson. She never imagined she would end up in an orange jumpsuit, locked behind cold iron bars, waiting for a trial that could decide the rest of her life. It all started a month ago. Maya had been living an ordinary life, working as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, trying her best to take care of her little brother, Jamal. She had always been the responsible one, the protector. After their parents died in a car crash when she was just 18, she had raised Jamal by herself. It wasn't easy, but she made sure he stayed out of trouble. Until one night, trouble found her. It was late, close to midnight. She had just finished her shift and was heading home when she saw flashing red and blue lights behind her. At first, she thought it was just a routine traffic stop, but when she pulled over, 2 officers approached with their hands on their guns. "Step out of the car, ma'am," one of them ordered. Confused, Maya did as she was told. That's when she saw it. A bag. A bag filled with money and drugs. Inside her trunk. Her mouth went dry. She had never seen that bag before in her life. "That's not mine," she said, her voice shaking. The officers exchanged glances. They didn't believe her. Before she knew it, she was being slammed against her car, her hands yanked behind her back, cold metal cuffs snapping around her wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." Maya couldn't even hear the rest. Her mind was spinning. Who did this? Who put that in her car? She thought of Jamal. Was he safe? Did he know what was happening? As she was thrown into the back of the police car, she looked up at the night sky and whispered, "God, please help me." But help didn't come. Not when she was booked. Not when she sat in that dark, damp jail cell for weeks. And definitely not when her court date was set. She had no one. No family. No money for a good lawyer. And now, standing in front of Judge Thomas Carter, the same boy she used to climb trees with, the same boy who once swore he'd always protect her, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. But just as that hope flickered to life, something happened that turned her world upside down once again. The prosecutor stood up, clearing his throat. "Your Honor," he said, "before we proceed, I would like to introduce a new key witness. Someone who has come forward with shocking new evidence against the defendant." Maya's stomach twisted into knots. "Who?" The doors of the courtroom opened. Heavy footsteps echoed through the silent hall. And then she saw him. Jamal. Her baby brother. The look on his face made her blood turn ice cold. He was terrified. And that's when she knew. He was about to say something that could either save her or destroy her forever. Maya's breath caught in her throat as Jamal stepped forward. He looked smaller than she remembered, his hoodie hanging off his thin frame, his eyes darting nervously around the courtroom. He wouldn't even look at her. She wanted to call out to him, to ask him what was going on, but she couldn't. She was frozen in place, her hands gripping the wooden table in front of her as if it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Thomas, still reeling from recognizing Maya, turned to the prosecutor. His voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it. "Who is this witness?" he asked. The prosecutor smirked, flipping through his notes. "This is Jamal Thompson, the defendant's younger brother. And, Your Honor, we believe his testimony will prove without a doubt that Maya Thompson is guilty." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. "Jamal," she whispered, barely able to breathe. Jamal looked up at her then, his lips pressed together so tightly they turned white. Tears welled in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. He turned back toward the prosecutor. "Go ahead, son," the prosecutor said, his voice smooth and coaxing, like a snake whispering in the dark. "Tell the court what you told us." Jamal swallowed hard. And then he spoke. "I saw Maya with the bag of drugs," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She knew about it." The words hit Maya like a truck. The entire courtroom exploded into murmurs and shocked whispers. The jury members exchanged looks. The prosecutor smiled like a man who had just won the lottery. Maya felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. No, this wasn't happening. "Jamal." She finally found her voice, her body shaking. "Why are you saying this? You know that's not true." Jamal's face twisted in pain, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Thomas's grip on his gavel tightened. This was all moving too fast. He looked at Jamal carefully, watching the way his hands fidgeted, the way he kept swallowing hard. Something wasn't right. "Young man," Thomas said, his voice calm but firm, "are you absolutely sure about what you're saying?" Jamal hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Maya saw it. Thomas saw it. Something was wrong. And then, right as Thomas was about to press further, something happened that no one in the courtroom was prepared for. The back doors burst open. A man in a black hoodie stormed in, pushing past security. His voice boomed across the courtroom. "Jamal, don't do it." The guards rushed toward him, but he held up his hands. "I have proof," he shouted. "Maya didn't do it. It was—" Bang! A gunshot rang out. Screams filled the room. People ducked, some scrambling under benches. Thomas jumped from his seat, reaching for the panic button under his desk. Maya's body jerked forward. She couldn't see who had fired the shot, but her gut told her. Jamal. She turned just in time to see her little brother clutching his stomach, his knees buckling beneath him. He collapsed to the floor. The courtroom fell into chaos. Maya screamed, "Jamal!" Thomas leaped from his chair, his judge's robe billowing as he rushed down from the bench. The bailiffs tackled the shooter, but Maya didn't care. She shoved past the table, crashing to her knees beside her brother. Blood. So much blood. His hands trembled as he reached for her. Maya. Tears blurred her vision. "Hold on. Okay? Stay with me." He coughed, a weak, painful sound. I wanted to tell the truth." His voice was fading, slipping away like sand through her fingers. "I didn't have a choice. He said he'd kill me if I didn't." "Who?" Maya cried. "Who made you do this?" Jamal's lips parted. His breath was shallow, and then his body went limp. The heart monitor inside the courtroom beeped wildly as paramedics burst through the doors. Maya screamed his name, shaking him, begging him to stay awake. But deep down, she already knew. Jamal was gone. And the real person behind this? They were still out there. Maya's world shattered. The sound of her own screams barely registered in her ears. She clutched Jamal's lifeless body, rocking him, willing him to wake up. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Thomas was beside her in seconds, gripping her shoulders. "Maya, the paramedics are here," he urged, his voice strained with urgency. "Let them help." She didn't move. Couldn't move. A pair of strong hands gently pulled her away as the medics worked on Jamal. But deep down, Maya knew it was too late. The blood pooling beneath him told her the truth. The courtroom had transformed into chaos. People were screaming, some were crying, and others were frantically trying to flee the building. The shooter, whoever they were, had been tackled and pinned by security. Thomas turned toward the bailiffs, his judge's robe still swaying from his hurried movements. "Who fired that shot?" he thundered. The man in the black hoodie, the one who had stormed into the courtroom shouting that he had proof, was now on the ground, clutching his arm where a bullet had grazed him. "It wasn't me," he coughed, shaking his head. "I swear it wasn't me." Thomas turned to the bailiffs. "Secure this building. Nobody leaves." The officers immediately locked down the exits. The jury, the lawyers, even the reporters. Everyone was stuck inside, murmuring in fear. Maya sat frozen on the floor, her hands covered in her brother's blood. And then, something clicked in her brain. Jamal's last words. "I didn't have a choice. He said he'd kill me if I didn't." Someone had forced her brother to testify against her. And now, they had silenced him forever. Her eyes shot to the man in the black hoodie. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice hoarse from screaming. The man groaned as he sat up. "My name is Darius. I came here to stop this. I was supposed to get to Jamal before he testified." Maya's pulse pounded. "Who told him to lie? Who's behind this?" Darius's face darkened. "The same person who put that bag in your car." A fresh wave of anger and confusion surged through Maya. "Who?" she shouted. Darius opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, another gunshot rang out. This time, it came from inside the courtroom. Screams erupted again. Maya spun around just in time to see one of the bailiffs drop to the floor, blood pouring from his chest. Someone was still trying to clean up loose ends. Thomas ducked behind his bench, his heart racing. "Everyone get down," he shouted. But Maya wasn't thinking about safety anymore. She was thinking about revenge. She locked eyes with Darius. "We need to get out of here," he muttered. "Now." Maya turned to Thomas, her childhood best friend, the man who once swore he'd always have her back. He stared at her, torn between his duty and his heart. Maya's voice was low but firm. "You know I didn't do this, Thomas." He hesitated. Another gunshot blasted through the courtroom. No more time to think. Thomas made a decision. "Go," he whispered. "Find out who did this. Find the truth." Maya didn't waste a second. She grabbed Darius's arm, and together, they sprinted toward the side exit. Bullets flying behind them. Maya and Darius burst through the emergency exit, their feet pounding against the pavement as they ran into the alley behind the courthouse. Sirens wailed in the distance. The chaos inside was spilling out into the streets. Reporters, police officers, and terrified civilians all scrambling to make sense of what had just happened. But Maya wasn't thinking about any of that. Jamal was dead. Someone had killed him to keep him quiet. And now, that same person was trying to kill her. Darius grabbed her wrist and yanked her behind a dumpster as a pair of officers ran past, their radios crackling. "They're locking the place down," he whispered. "We don't have much time." Maya was still shaking. Jamal's blood was drying on her hands, a haunting reminder that this wasn't some nightmare she could wake up from. She looked up at Darius. "You said you have proof. Show me." Darius's jaw tightened. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket and held it up. "It's all in here. Names, accounts, phone calls, everything." Maya's heart pounded. "Who?" she demanded. "Who set me up? Who killed my brother?" Darius hesitated. "It's bigger than you think, Maya. It's not just one person. It's a whole operation. Your brother got caught up in something dangerous. And when he tried to back out, they made sure he couldn't." Maya's hands clenched into fists. "Give me a name, Darius." He exhaled sharply. "Raymond Stokes." The name sent a chill down Maya's spine. Raymond Stokes was a well-known businessman in the city, a man who had built his reputation on philanthropy, funding schools, and community centers. But behind that polished image, there were whispers. Whispers about drugs, money laundering, and people disappearing when they crossed him. Maya's voice shook. Jamal was working for Stokes? Darius nodded grimly. Not by choice. Stokes had him running deliveries, keeping his mouth shut. But Jamal got scared. He wanted out. He was going to tell you everything. Maya's stomach twisted. Her baby brother had been trapped, and now he was dead because of it. Before she could say another word, tires screeched at the end of the alley. A black SUV turned the corner, its headlights glaring like twin eyes locked onto them. Darius cursed.
Run.
But Maya didn't move. She was done running. The SUV door flew open, and two men in suits stepped out. One of them held a gun. Hand it over, he ordered, motioning to the flash drive in Darius's hand.
Now.
Darius slowly raised his hands, but Maya saw the tension in his muscles. He wasn't going to give it up. Neither was she. You killed my brother, she said, her voice raw with fury. The man with the gun smirked. No, sweetheart. Your brother killed himself the moment he thought he could betray Mr. Stokes. Red-hot rage flooded Maya's veins. She lunged. The man barely had time to react before Maya slammed into him, knocking his gun arm to the side. The gun went off, the bullet ricocheting against the alley wall. Darius moved at the same time, swinging his fist into the second man's jaw, sending him staggering backward. Maya fought like a woman who had nothing left to lose. She twisted the gunman's wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon. Then, using all the strength she had left, she drove her knee into his stomach. He gasped, doubling over. Darius grabbed the gun off the ground and aimed it at the second man, who immediately raised his hands. Don't shoot, he begged. Maya grabbed the first man by the collar. Tell Stokes I'm coming for him. Then, she shoved him to the ground and ran. Darius was right behind her, the flash drive clutched tightly in his hand. Behind them, the men groaned in pain. But Maya knew, this was just the beginning. Raymond Stokes had stolen her brother's life. Now, she was going to take his empire down, and she wouldn't stop until everyone who had a hand in this paid the price. Maya and Darius sprinted through the dark streets, their breath coming in sharp gasps. Behind them, the men from the SUV were scrambling back to their feet, shouting into their radios. They're calling for backup, Darius said between breaths. We need to disappear. Fast? Maya's mind raced. They couldn't go home. The police were already hunting her down after she'd fled the courtroom, and now, Raymond Stokes's men were after them too. She glanced down at her hands, Jamal's dried blood still smeared across her fingers. A fresh wave of fury surged through her. No more running. We need to go underground, she said firmly. Darius nodded. I know a place. He led her through winding back streets, cutting through alleyways and dodging security cameras. Eventually, they reached an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Darius pounded on the rusted metal door 3 times, then paused, then knocked twice more. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the door creaked open, revealing a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and short dreadlocks. She looked them up and down, her gaze lingering on Maya's blood-stained clothes. Darius lifted his hands. We need a place to lay low, Auntie Rena. The woman, Rena, exhaled heavily but stepped aside. Get in. Quick. As soon as they were inside, Rena locked the door behind them. The place was dimly lit, filled with old furniture and stacks of crates. Maya wiped her forehead. Who is she? My godmother, Darius explained. She used to be in the game. Now she helps people disappear. Rena crossed her arms. And why do I suddenly feel like I'm in danger just by letting y'all in here? Darius held up the flash drive. Because we're going after Raymond Stokes. Rena's eyes widened. Then, to Maya's surprise, she laughed, a bitter, knowing laugh. You must have a death wish, Rena muttered. That man doesn't just ruin lives. He erases them. Maya stepped forward, her fists clenched. He erased my brothers. The room fell silent. Rena studied her for a long moment. Then, she sighed and motioned for them to sit. All right, she said. Talk to me. Darius plugged the flash drive into an old laptop. Jamal was working for Stokes, moving shipments, keeping quiet. But he wanted out. When he tried to leave, they framed Maya, planted drugs in her car to make sure she took the fall. Maya's hands trembled as she looked at the screen. And when Jamal tried to tell the truth, they killed him. Rena shook her head. And now you're trying to take down the most dangerous man in the city with one little flash drive. Darius clicked a few keys, pulling up a series of encrypted files. Not just one drive. This has bank transactions, names of corrupt cops, shipments, enough to burn his whole operation to the ground. Rena's expression turned serious. Does Stokes know you have this? Darius hesitated. I don't think. Boom. The warehouse door exploded inward. The force sent Maya flying back against a crate. Her ears rang from the blast as smoke filled the air. Gunshots erupted. "Get down!" Rena shouted, pulling a gun from under the table. Maya scrambled behind cover as armed men stormed inside, their faces covered with black masks. Stokes's men. "Find the flash drive," one of them barked. Darius fired first, taking down one of the intruders. Rena was right behind him, moving like a woman who had been in shootouts before. Maya's heart pounded. She had never fired a gun in her life, but that didn't matter now. She grabbed the laptop and the flash drive and shoved them into her bag. Then, she spotted an old crowbar lying near a crate. Without thinking, she grabbed it. A man lunged at her. She swung. The crowbar connected with his skull with a sickening crack. He dropped like a stone. Another man charged at her. She ducked, swinging upward this time, striking him under the chin. Blood splattered. Her hands were shaking, her breath ragged. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Darius grabbed her wrist. "We have to move." Rena fired 2 more shots before following them toward the back exit. Maya's pulse pounded as they ran out into the night. Behind them, the warehouse was still ringing with gunfire. They barely made it to the next street when Rena grabbed Maya's arm, forcing her to stop. "You're in this deep now, girl," she said. "You really ready to go all the way?" Maya didn't hesitate. "Stokes took my brother." Her voice was ice cold. "I'm taking everything from him." Rena studied her. Then, she nodded. "Then we better get you some real weapons," she said. Maya exhaled, the weight of what she had just done settling over her. There was no turning back. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about war. The 3 of them moved fast, weaving through the darkened streets, avoiding security cameras and police checkpoints. Maya's hands were still shaking from what had just happened. She had never fought like that before, never swung a weapon with the kind of force that could shatter bone. But she didn't regret it. For the first time since Jamal died, she didn't feel powerless. Rena led them to an underground parking garage. They climbed into a rusted old sedan, and she fired up the engine. "Where are we going?" Maya asked, gripping her seatbelt. Rena flicked on the headlights. "To get you some firepower." The drive was tense and silent. Every time Maya saw another black SUV in the distance, her heart leapt into her throat. Stokes's men were looking for them. And after what happened at the warehouse, they wouldn't be coming to talk. Darius kept his gun in his lap, his foot tapping anxiously against the car floor. "You okay?" he asked, glancing at Maya. She stared out the window, her mind racing. "I just killed someone." Darius didn't say anything right away. Then, after a moment, he exhaled. "Yeah, but if you didn't, he would have killed you." Maya swallowed hard. She knew he was right, but it didn't make the weight in her chest any lighter. Rena pulled off the main road, taking them through a maze of back alleys until they reached a small auto shop with a flickering neon sign that read, "Closed." She honked twice. The garage door slowly lifted, revealing a massive man with a scar across his cheek and a cigarette dangling from his lips. He eyed the car before motioning them inside. "Rena," he grunted. "Thought you were done with this life." Rena smirked. "And I thought you quit smoking, Rick." "Guess we're both liars." Rick chuckled, stepping aside to let them in. The moment the garage door closed behind them, Maya felt her muscles unclench slightly. At least here, they weren't out in the open. Rick pulled open a hidden door behind a stack of tires, leading them into a back room lined with metal shelves. And those shelves? They were filled with guns. Maya's breath hitched. She had never even touched a gun before tonight. But if she was going to take down Raymond Stokes, she needed to be ready. Rick looked her up and down. She ever used one of these before? Rena shook her head. "Not yet." Rick whistled, walking over to one of the shelves and grabbing a compact pistol. He held it out to Maya. "Hold it." She hesitated before wrapping her fingers around the grip. It was heavier than she expected. Rick nodded. "Now aim." Maya lifted the gun, but before she could steady it, Rick grabbed her wrist. She gasped. "Too stiff," he muttered. "You hold a gun like that, it'll kick back and break your nose." Maya swallowed hard. I don't know what I'm doing." "Then you better learn fast," Rick said. He stepped back, pointing to an old punching bag in the corner. That's your target. Hit it. Maya's hands trembled, but she squared her shoulders, aimed, and pulled the trigger. Bang! The noise echoed through the garage, making her flinch. She missed completely. Rick sighed. We got work to do. Darius clapped her on the back. It's a start. Maya tightened her grip on the gun. A start wasn't good enough. She needed to be ready. She needed to be dangerous. Because Stokes wasn't going to wait. He was coming for her. And next time, she wouldn't miss. Hours later, after what felt like 100 rounds fired, Maya's arms ached, her ears were ringing, and her heart was pounding. But she was getting better. Rick studied her closely, nodding in approval. You're a fast learner. Maya wiped sweat from her forehead. I don't have a choice. Rena checked her phone, her expression darkening. Then it's time to move. Maya and Darius looked at her. What happened? Darius asked. Rena turned the screen toward them. It was a news alert. Breaking. Courtroom shooter identified as alleged gang affiliate linked to Maya Thompson. Maya's blood ran cold. They were framing her. The article claimed that the shooter, who had been taken into custody, was a known associate of Maya's, that she had orchestrated an escape, had ties to organized crime, and was now a fugitive. Her picture was everywhere. Every news station, every website. They weren't just hunting her. They were turning the whole city against her. Maya gritted her teeth. Stokes thinks he can bury me, she said, her voice deadly calm. He thinks he can take everything from me and get away with it. She looked at Darius. Do we have enough to take this public? Darius frowned. The evidence is strong, but if the media's already calling you a criminal, they won't believe it. Maya exhaled sharply. Then we go straight for Stokes. Rena raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do you plan on doing that? Maya tightened her grip on the gun. I'm going to walk into his world, she said, and burn it to the ground. Darius and Rena exchanged glances. You're talking about going into Stokes's territory, Darius said. That's suicide. Maya's eyes burned with fury. So is running. Silence stretched between them. Then, Rena sighed. You're crazier than I thought. She tossed a set of car keys to Maya. If we're doing this, we do it right, Rena said. I know someone who can get us into Stokes's next big event. Maya's pulse quickened. Event? Rena smirked. Every few months, Stokes throws a private party. Big money, big players, no outsiders. Darius's eyes widened. And you know someone on the inside? Rena shrugged. Let's just say I still have some old connections. Maya clenched her fists. This was it. Their way in. Then let's get to work, she said. Because by the time she was done, Raymond Stokes would wish he had killed her when he had the chance. Maya sat in the back seat of the stolen black sedan, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. Her grip on the pistol resting in her lap tightened with each passing second. This was happening. She was about to walk straight into the lion's den. Rena drove in silence, her face unreadable. Darius sat in the passenger seat, loading his own gun, checking the magazine before snapping it back in place. You good? He asked, glancing at Maya through the rearview mirror. She exhaled. I don't know, but I don't have a choice, do I? Darius gave a humorless chuckle. No, you don't. Rena turned onto a secluded road, leading to a massive gated estate on the outskirts of the city. Palm trees lined the driveway, their silhouettes illuminated by soft golden lights. Welcome to Stokes's playground, Rena muttered. Maya's stomach twisted as she took in the scene. Dozens of luxury cars were parked outside the mansion. The entire place screamed wealth, excess, and power. And behind those walls? The man who destroyed her life. She clenched her fists. Not for long. You sure this contact of yours can get us inside? Darius asked. Rena nodded. Her name's Ava. She used to work for Stokes, but she's been looking for a way out for a long time. If we play this right, she'll get us through security. Maya took a deep breath. And if we don't? Rena smirked. Then we die in designer clothes. Not the answer she was hoping for. The car rolled to a stop outside the gates. Two armed guards approached, their eyes scanning the vehicle. Darius rolled down the window. The first guard leaned in. Names? Rena pulled out an invitation, one she had borrowed from an unlucky guest earlier that night. "We're with Ava," she said coolly. The guard studied the invite before stepping back and murmuring into his radio. A few tense seconds passed before a voice crackled back. "Let them in." The gates slid open. Maya's heart pounded as they drove through. They were in. Inside, the mansion was even more extravagant than Maya had imagined. Crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed walls, and an ocean view that stretched beyond the horizon. The room was filled with powerful men in expensive suits, women in glittering dresses, and servers weaving between them, pouring champagne. A live band played soft jazz, adding to the illusion of elegance. But Maya knew better. This wasn't just a party. It was a gathering of criminals. Raymond Stokes ran this city from the shadows, and everyone in this room was either on his payroll or afraid of him. She scanned the crowd, looking for Ava. "There," Rena whispered, nodding toward a stunning woman in a tight red dress standing by the bar. Her dark curls framed her face, and she was speaking in hushed tones to a man in a tailored suit. Maya, Darius, and Rena approached carefully. Ava turned, her sharp green eyes locking onto them. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, she tilted her glass slightly. "Didn't think you'd make it," she murmured. Rena smirked. "We don't die easy." Ava's gaze flickered to Maya. "You're the one they're looking for," she said, her voice laced with intrigue. "The runaway." Maya's jaw tightened. "I'm the one who's about to make Stokes regret everything he's done." Ava studied her for a moment before smirking. "I like you." Maya cut to the chase. "Can you get us to him?" Ava swirled her drink. "Stokes doesn't just let anyone near him. You need an invitation." Darius raised an eyebrow. "And do you have one?" Ava's smirk widened. "Oh, I have something better." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a sleek black key card. "This," she said, "gets you past the security doors and into his private study." Maya's pulse quickened. "What's in there?" "Everything," Ava whispered. "Files, records, transactions, evidence that could bring him down. You get inside, you take what you need, and you get out." Maya reached for the card, but Ava pulled it back. "One problem," she said. "The room is guarded. Stokes doesn't take chances." Darius crossed his arms. "So what's the plan?" Ava's eyes glimmered. "You cause a distraction. I'll get you inside." Maya exchanged a glance with Rena. "How big of a distraction?" Rena asked. Ava smirked. "The kind that makes people scream." Minutes later, Maya was positioned near the dance floor, heart pounding. Rena was at the bar, her fingers wrapped around a small glass bottle filled with clear liquid. Darius stood near the exit, keeping an eye on the guards. And Ava? She was already slipping through the crowd toward Stokes's private hallway. Maya exhaled. This was it. "Do it," she whispered. Rena unscrewed the cap and, without hesitation, poured the liquid into a nearby glass of champagne. Then, with a devilish smile, she handed the drink to one of Stokes's men. The guard downed it in one gulp. Seconds passed. Then, the man staggered. His face twisted in confusion, then panic. He clutched his throat, gasping for air. Someone screamed. The music screeched to a halt. Maya stepped back as chaos erupted around her. The poisoned guard collapsed, knocking over a table. More guards rushed toward him, shouting orders. All eyes were on the dying man, and no one noticed Maya slip away. She darted down the hallway, moving fast. The security doors loomed ahead, 2 guards standing watch. Before they could react, Ava appeared behind them. She pressed a silencer to the first man's head. Pfft. He crumpled. The second guard turned, but Maya was faster. She grabbed a decorative vase from a nearby table and smashed it against his skull. He hit the ground hard. Ava pulled the key card from her clutch and swiped it. The doors unlocked with a soft beep. Maya stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, lined with bookshelves and a massive desk in the center. A large computer monitor glowed on the desk. This was it. She rushed to the computer, her hands shaking as she plugged in a flash drive. Files, transactions, wire transfers, names. Everything was here. She started copying the files, her pulse hammering. Then, a shadow moved behind her. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She turned and came face to face with Raymond Stokes. He was standing in the doorway, a glass of whiskey in one hand, a gun in the other, and he was smiling. "Well, well," he murmured. "I was wondering when you'd come for me." Maya's breath caught in her throat. The door slammed shut behind him, trapping her inside. Maya's heart pounded as she stared at Raymond Stokes. He was exactly as she had imagined, tall, polished, a man who wore his wealth like armor. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, and his sharp eyes gleamed with amusement. But it was his smile that sent chills down her spine. It was the smile of a man who had already won. "You've made quite a mess, Maya," he mused, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "I have to admit, I'm impressed. Most people wouldn't have made it this far." Maya clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. The flash drive was still copying files. She needed time. "You framed me," she said, her voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside her. "You killed my brother." Stokes sighed dramatically. "Killed is such a strong word. Your brother was unfortunate, but he made his choice. He betrayed me." He took a slow sip of his drink. "You should be thanking me. I gave him purpose, a job, a future, and he threw it away." Maya's nails dug into her palms. "You forced him into your world. He never wanted this." Stokes tilted his head. "And yet, here you are, standing in my office, proving you belong in it." Maya's stomach twisted. She wasn't like him. She wasn't a killer. But she wanted to be the one to end him. The computer beeped. File transfer complete. Stokes's gaze flicked to the screen. His smile widened. "Now, what exactly do you plan to do with that, He took another sip of whiskey, his gun still lazily pointed in her direction. "Turn me into the police? The same police who take my money? Who do you think owns this city?" Maya swallowed hard. He was right. The system was corrupt. The police wouldn't help her. But she wasn't looking for help. She was looking for justice. Stokes stepped closer, placing his drink on the desk. "You know, Maya, you have potential." She froze. He smirked. "You're smart. You fight. You don't back down. It's a shame your brother didn't have the same fire." Rage exploded inside her. Before she could think, before she could even register what she was doing, she grabbed the heavy glass paperweight on his desk and swung. It smashed into Stokes's wrist. His gun clattered to the floor. He cursed, staggering back, but Maya was already moving. She lunged for the gun. Bang! Pain exploded in her shoulder. She gasped, stumbling back as blood soaked her dress. Stokes had pulled a second gun from his waistband. Maya collapsed against the desk, gripping her wound as hot pain seared through her arm. Stokes grinned. "You almost had me," he said, shaking his head. "But you're sloppy." Maya's vision blurred. She couldn't die here. Not now. Not when she was this close. Stokes raised his gun again, aiming for her head. "Goodbye, Maya." The door burst open. Ava fired twice. Bang! Bang! Stokes jerked back, blood spraying from his shoulder and thigh. He dropped his gun, cursing as he collapsed against the bookshelf. Ava rushed in, gun still aimed at him. "We have to go now." Maya's breath came in ragged gasps, but she pushed through the pain. She grabbed the flash drive and stumbled toward the door. Stokes laughed, his voice laced with pain. "You really think this is over?" he rasped. "You think taking me down will change anything?" Maya turned back, gripping the gun Stokes had dropped. For a split second, she imagined pulling the trigger, ending this. But she wasn't like him. She wasn't a monster. Instead, she stepped forward and kicked him square in the face. His head snapped back against the bookshelf, and he slumped over, unconscious. Ava grabbed her arm. "Come on." Maya let herself be pulled through the door, her shoulders screaming in pain. The hallway was chaos. Guards were running in all directions, some shouting orders, others grabbing weapons. Darius and Rena were firing back, covering their escape. "She got it?" Darius yelled. Maya held up the flash drive, her fingers slick with blood. Rena grinned. "Then let's get the hell out of here." They ran. Bullets whizzed past as they sprinted through the mansion. The party had completely fallen apart. Guests were screaming, guards were scrambling, and alarms were blaring. Ava led them through a side exit, into the garage where expensive cars lined the lot. Rena hotwired a black sports car in seconds. Get in. Maya, Darius, and Ava jumped in as more guards stormed outside. Bang, bang, bang. Gunfire ripped through the air as Rena slammed on the gas, tires screeching as they peeled out onto the road. Maya clutched her bleeding shoulder, breathing hard. They had done it. They had everything they needed to destroy Stokes. But as the mansion disappeared behind them, Maya realized something. This wasn't over. Not yet. Because Raymond Stokes wasn't the kind of man who stayed down. And he wasn't done with her. The black sports car tore through the city streets at breakneck speed, weaving through traffic as sirens blared in the distance. Rena gripped the wheel, her jaw set. We need to get off the main roads. Cops are crawling all over. Maya clutched her wounded shoulder, gritting her teeth against the pain. The fabric of her dress was soaked in blood, sticking to her skin like a second layer. Darius, sitting beside her, tore off a piece of his shirt and pressed it against the wound. She hissed in pain. You're gonna be fine, Darius muttered. Just hold on. Maya nodded, but her mind was spinning. They had the evidence. The flash drive was in her pocket, carrying enough dirt to burn Stokes's entire empire to the ground. But was it enough? She glanced out the back window. No black SUVs. No headlights tailing them. Yet something felt off. Too easy. Rena cut through an alleyway, heading toward the industrial district, a dead zone for surveillance, away from the city's watchful eyes. The streets were lined with abandoned warehouses, rusted fences, and cracked pavement. She finally slowed the car, pulling into a shadowed lot behind an old mechanic's shop. The moment she cut the engine, the silence pressed in. For the first time in hours, they weren't running. Ava exhaled sharply, pressing her head against the window. Holy hell. I can't believe we just pulled that off. Darius leaned back in his seat, his breathing still heavy. We're alive. That's what matters. But Maya knew better. They weren't safe. Not yet. She forced herself to sit up, wincing as pain flared in her shoulder. We need to move fast. Stokes won't stay down for long. Rena turned in her seat. We just shot him in his own house. You think he's gonna let that slide? Maya shook her head. No. He's gonna come after us with everything he's got. Darius reached into his pocket and pulled out a burner phone. Then we go public. Right now. He looked at Maya. You ready to blow this whole thing open? Maya hesitated, her fingers tightening around the flash drive. This was it. The moment that would change everything. She took a deep breath. Do it. Darius plugged the drive into the phone and started uploading the files. His fingers moved fast, setting up multiple encrypted backups. He wasn't just sending the evidence to one place. He was sending it everywhere. To journalists. To independent investigators. To online whistleblowers. Within minutes, the files were gone from their hands, uploaded into the digital world where Stokes couldn't erase them. Darius leaned back, exhaling. It's done. Maya's chest rose and fell heavily. Then why don't I feel relieved? Silence stretched between them. Because it wasn't over. Not yet. 30 minutes later. They had barely started patching up Maya's wound when Rena's phone buzzed. She checked the screen. Her face went pale. Maya's heart stopped. What? Rena cursed under her breath and turned the phone toward them. The screen showed a breaking news alert. Citywide manhunt underway. Maya Thompson wanted for multiple homicide. Maya froze. Darius grabbed the phone, his eyes widening as he scrolled. What the hell? They're pinning a massacre on you. Maya snatched the phone. The news was already spreading. Every major outlet was calling her an armed and dangerous fugitive linked to a mass shooting at Stokes's mansion. They were blaming her for everything. The poison guard, the dead security team, even the shootout at the warehouse. Stokes had flipped the narrative. Instead of a criminal mastermind exposed, he was now a victim of an assassination attempt. And Maya? She was now the city's most wanted murderer. Her entire body went cold. They're not just trying to kill me, she whispered. They're trying to erase me. Rena rubbed her face, shaking her head. This is bad. Real bad. The cops, Stokes's men. Hell, even bounty hunters might be looking for you now. Ava swore under her breath. We need a new plan. Fast. Darius paced, his jaw clenched. We just exposed him. How the hell is he still pulling this off? Maya's mind raced. There was only one way Stokes could control the media this fast. The mayor, she said suddenly. Everyone stilled. Rena frowned. What? Maya's pulse pounded. Stokes owns more than just the police. He owns the mayor's office, the media, the politicians. She turned to Darius. The files. Was there anything on city officials? Darius's eyes widened. He quickly pulled up the remaining files on his phone, scrolling through bank transactions. Then, he froze. Maya. His voice was tight. Stokes has been funding Mayor Bradford's campaign for years. Millions in bribes, payoffs, blackmail. Ava's breath hitched. Holy hell. Maya's eyes burned with fury. That's why the police are coming down on us so hard, she whispered. That's why the media flipped so fast. The mayor is protecting him. Rena leaned forward, gripping the wheel. Then we have a new target. Maya met her gaze. If we can expose the mayor, Rena continued, Stokes loses his protection. The police can't cover for him anymore. The media won't be able to ignore it. Darius nodded slowly. But that means getting inside City Hall. Into the mayor's office. Ava gave a low whistle. Breaking into a crime boss's mansion was one thing. But breaking into the government? That's a whole different beast. Maya's fingers tightened into fists. This isn't just about me anymore, she said, her voice low but fierce. Stokes has been controlling this city from the shadows for years. He killed my brother. He ruined lives. Her gaze hardened. It ends now. Silence hung thick in the air. Then, slowly, Rena grinned. Well, damn. You sound like someone about to start a revolution. Maya's lips curled. Maybe I am. Darius cracked his knuckles. Then let's get to work. Ava smirked. Guess I always wanted to rob a politician. Maya turned toward the city skyline, her blood boiling with purpose. The mayor thought he could bury the truth. Stokes thought he could erase her. They were both dead wrong. Because tomorrow, Maya Thompson wasn't just going after Stokes. She was taking down everyone who protected him. And by the time she was done, there wouldn't be a single person left to cover his tracks. The plan was simple. Get into City Hall. Expose the mayor. Bring down Stokes. But simple didn't mean easy. Maya, Darius, Rena, and Ava sat in a darkened room, a single lamp flickering overhead. The air smelled of oil and dust, the remnants of an old auto shop long abandoned. Darius had laid out a blueprint of City Hall on the table, tracing the pathways with his finger. This is where we need to be, he said, tapping the mayor's private office. All of Stokes's deals, bribes, and payoffs? If they exist, they're on his secure server. Maya studied the map. And security? Ava smirked. You mean the armed guards, cameras, and biometric locks? She leaned back. Oh yeah, plenty of that. Rena crossed her arms. You better tell me there's a way around that, genius. Darius nodded. There is. But it's high risk. Maya wasn't afraid of risk. Tell me. Darius sighed. The best way in is through the gala tomorrow night. The mayor is hosting a fundraiser for city development, which, as we know, is just code for lining Stokes's pockets. Rena whistled. That means the entire who's who of dirty politics will be there. Exactly, Darius said. If we can slip in, we can get to the office unnoticed. Ava and I will hack the security feeds. Rena will handle our getaway car, and Maya. He looked at her. You'll get inside and plug this in. He slid a USB drive across the table. Maya picked it up. What's on it? Enough to turn that server into a live broadcast, Darius said. Every corrupt transaction, every bribe, every order from Stokes. It'll all stream straight to the press, the police, and the public. Ava grinned. A city-wide confession. Maya's grip tightened around the USB. Then let's do it. The gala, City Hall. Maya moved through the crowd, her heartbeat steady despite the storm inside her. The grand ballroom was packed with politicians, business moguls, and criminals dressed in their finest. Glittering chandeliers hung from the ceiling, waiters carried trays of champagne, and the mayor himself stood at the front, shaking hands and laughing. He had no idea he was about to lose everything. Maya wasn't alone. Darius and Ava sat in a van parked 2 blocks away, hacking into City Hall's security system. Rena was outside, behind the wheel of an idling car, ready for a quick getaway. Maya touched the earpiece hidden in her hair. "I'm in." Darius's voice crackled in. "Security cams are looping. You have 5 minutes before someone notices." That was all she needed. Maya slipped away from the crowd, moving through a side hallway. She blended in. Just another woman in a black gown, walking like she belonged. She reached the restricted access door. A guard stood nearby. Ava's voice came through the earpiece. "You got a plan B?" Maya didn't hesitate. She stepped closer to the guard, smiling sweetly. "Excuse me," she purred, tilting her head. "I think I'm lost." The guard barely had time to blink before she jammed the needle into his neck. His body went slack in seconds. "Plan B," she whispered, stepping over his unconscious form and swiping his keycard. She was in the mayor's office. Maya rushed inside, locking the door behind her. The room was grand. Mahogany desk, gold-trimmed bookshelves, a massive window overlooking the city. But she wasn't here to admire the view. She ran to the computer, yanked out the mayor's hard drive, and plugged in the USB. Darius's voice was sharp. "You're live." Maya watched as file after file began uploading. Bank transactions, emails, secret meetings, the proof of every crime, every dirty deal, every murder ordered by Stokes and covered by the mayor. The data spread like wildfire, not just to the press, but to the entire city. Within seconds, news anchors were interrupting broadcasts. Headlines were flashing. The truth was out. Then, the office door burst open. Maya spun, gun raised. Raymond Stokes stood in the doorway. His face was calm, but his eyes were filled with rage. Behind him, 4 armed men pointed their guns at her. "You never knew when to stop," Stokes said coldly. Maya's finger tightened on the trigger. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." Stokes smirked. "Oh, don't worry." He stepped forward. "I'll make sure you die slow." Maya's mind raced. There were too many of them. She was trapped. But then, gunfire erupted. Stokes's men dropped like flies, blood spraying against the walls. Maya dove behind the desk as more bullets tore through the air. Then, silence. She peeked up and saw Darius standing in the doorway, smoking gun in hand. "You good?" he asked. Maya exhaled sharply. "Yeah." Stokes groaned, clutching his shoulder where a bullet had torn through. Darius aimed his gun at his head. "You don't deserve a trial," he muttered. Maya hesitated. She wanted to kill Stokes. He deserved to die. But, "No," she said quietly. Darius looked at her. "Maya, he doesn't get to be a martyr," she cut in. "He doesn't get the easy way out." She grabbed the mayor's phone, still connected to the live broadcast, and turned it toward Stokes. The entire city was watching. Every crime, every murder, every betrayal. It was all exposed. "You're done," Maya whispered. Sirens screamed outside. The police were here. But not Stokes's men, not the corrupt officers on his payroll. The FBI. Stokes's face darkened as agents stormed in, guns raised. "Raymond Stokes." One of them barked. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and murder." Maya watched him fall, handcuffed, powerless. And for the first time since Jamal died, she felt peace. 1 week later, the headlines were everywhere. Mayor Bradford resigns in disgrace. Crime boss Raymond Stokes arrested, faces life in prison. Maya Thompson, from fugitive to hero. She stood at Jamal's grave, placing a single white rose on the stone. She had done it. She had avenged him. Darius, Rena, and Ava stood behind her, silent. "What now?" Darius asked. Maya exhaled. "Now." She turned, staring at the city skyline. "We rebuild." The nightmare was over. And Maya? She was finally free.